Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday study group where we're studying the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe's speech to the Jewish people before his passing, where he outlines for us exactly what is meant to be part of this chosen people. I do want to thank Mitch Silverman, who's today's sponsor for today's class. A big yashikar to you. Thank you so much, and thanks for joining us every single week. We have been finishing the first paragraph of the Shema, waiting to excitedly begin the second paragraph of Shema, which we'll probably do next Wednesday. We keep hearing these comments that the volume is low, and I've tried to adjust it on my end. See if you can adjust it on your end, otherwise we'll have some professional come in and take a look and to see what's wrong, because each week someone comments that the volume is low. Is it better now? I don't see any of you anyway, so you could send me a message that the volume is any better. I'll bring the microphone a little closer. Tell me if that's working out better for you now. Your volume is fine. Thank you, Linda. See if on your own laptops or wherever you're listening on your phones, you can up the volume by you and see if that helps. Otherwise, we'll look into it. We have been doing the last line of the Shema, which talks about the Tefillin and the Mezuzah. And once we conclude that, we're going to get into V'hayim Shemoah Tishmu, the second paragraph of the Shema, which is from the portion of Akev. We're finishing up on this mitzvah of Tefillin. And the mitzvah of Tefillin is a physical act. It's something that we do. It's a ritual that is connected to action. It's something we do every day other than on Shabbat. And people often wonder about the physical commandments, the mitzvot that are connected to the actual ritual to doing something. And they wonder, why does Judaism have so many rituals? And I'll back it up by this question. The holiday of Passover is filled with rituals. What is the rituals all about? About remembering the Exodus. And one can ask the question, is it not possible to remember the Exodus without making the Passover Seder? Can you think about God when you come home or when you leave in the morning without any physical reminder? Can you devote your thought, speech, and action to God without putting on the tefillin? The answer is, yeah, it's possible. Women can definitely do it. They're not commanded for the mitzvah of tefillin because they have the ability to turn on that switch and think about God at all times. They're far more spiritual than men. Their focus on the home is always a spiritual force, and therefore they have that constant reminder. But it's very clear that the Torah identifies to us it's possible, but it's unlikely, meaning there's a good chance if we simply told you that on the 14th day of the month of Nisan in the evening, think about the Exodus, but we don't connect it to any ritual, there's a very good chance that you won't be thinking about the Exodus. Why? Because the world is filled with distractions. Now, I could have made that claim that the world is filled with distractions 20 years ago. But if it was true 20 years ago, do you imagine how true it is today? The distractions that we face today of simply having your entire world in a cell phone in which you can be communicated with and communicated to and watch the communication of millions of people simply just touching a screen. You have access to, I would say, perhaps a few 100,000 films right in the palm of your hand. If we simply rewound the clock just 20 years ago, all right, we had something called cable television, so you had 100 stations. Now rewind the clock 30 years ago, you had channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. That's about it. And you had those strange-looking antennas on your television that you had to constantly move around. Maybe you can get PBS in that time. But that was the distraction level. Imagine the distraction today of what you have. You no longer have office hours of 9 to 5. Your office hours are 24 hours a day. It's nonstop. The rituals come and force this withdrawal. The rituals of Shabbat come and force a withdrawal on you. The ritual of Passover force that withdrawal and say, focus on Passover. And in order to help you do that, We're going to tell you about a Passover Seder that you're going to conduct, that you're going to either be invited to or invite people to. And we're going to fill you with rituals the entire night, which will force everyone around that table to have a discussion about the Exodus and what the Exodus means to them. Everyone's conversation is going to be different. What the Exodus means to each individual is going to be different, but at least we're having that conversation. Without the rituals, we don't have that conversation. Judaism needs physical acts. It needs the mitzvot. Why? Because the mitzvot is what connects us. The mitzvah doesn't allow us to forget. When mitzvahs are left out, it's so easy to forget. What I would call the rituals are the vehicle, the car, the automobile. What is the automobile? The automobile is about transporting you from one point to the next. It takes you to a destination. The mitzvah takes you from one place to the next. It's your vehicle. It's your connection. It transports you and your mind and action to where you need to be as a Jew, so that we can deliver these messages that Moses tells us thousands of years ago we need to deliver to a world. Why does it need this ritual? Why does it need this vehicle? Why does this need this mode of communication, so to say, through a ritual? Because we are physical human beings. We're not spiritual angels. And as a physical human being, we need a physical reminder. We need our alarm clocks. We need it constantly. The mitzvah reminds us what we need to be focusing on. More important, we need the vehicle to transmit the message to the next generation. A generation that doesn't practice the physical mitzvot is a generation that doesn't transmit the Jewish message and ideals to the next generation. Somehow it loses it. That's the struggle that we face today. That's the challenge that we face today. That's the challenge of our generation, transmitting the message of Judaism to our children, to our grandchildren, and to our great-grandchildren. If we simply give them lectures, if we simply talk to them about it, it doesn't work. But if we pass on the ritual, then the ritual helps transmit the message. When you tell your children this night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, we're having the Passover Seder, there's a message that being transmitted. When you have the Mezuzah on your doorpost, the kid knows that there's an identity in that Mezuzah. It means something. Everything that we do has a message to it. The kippah has a message. A tzedakah box, a charity box, in which you take a penny and you put that penny in the charity box. Maybe that penny is not going to change the poor person's life, but the penny in the charity box is sending a message to all those around that life is not just about self, but it's about giving to others. Every ritual we have has a fundamental message, and it reminds us of our mission, it reminds us of our task, and it reminds our children and our grandchildren that they play a very, very important role in the history of Judaism and in the history of the world. Judaism left without the ritual begins to fade. And so our challenge today, again, I always speak to my audience, whatever level of observance you may be on, is to find a way to bring as many rituals into our lives and to do so publicly, for us to see, for our families to see, for our neighbors to see, for our fellow Jew to see, for our world to see. Which, by the way, people wonder why we don't put on tefillin on Shabbat. We don't, because Shabbat itself, the entire day, is that reminder. I don't need a reminder on a day. That entire day is this escape from the false reality to the real reality, from the physical and mundane to the spiritual and the elevated. Every day of Shabbat has that, every minute of Shabbat has that elevation to this spiritual level. I would say this, the whole day is tefillin. And the same idea, someone asked last week why women do not put on tefillin. They're not obligated to put on tefillin because they are naturally spiritual all day. There is a certain spirituality that a woman has that a man simply does not. A man is clearly involved in a world in a far more colder way, and therefore needs this constant reminder. For a woman, her very body, her very home, her very essence is the tefillin. Now, tefillin is clearly all about reminder of the Exodus. That's what we're supposed to think about when we put the tefillin on, a reminder of the Exodus. And the Exodus represents this personal experience of leaving exile. And it's not just a historical moment, because we each leave our own exiles. We are each in an exile, and we each battle every day to leave that exile and to travel to our personal Sinai. Egypt represents the physical, Sinai represents the spiritual. The Exodus represents us demonstrating ourselves and to the world that there is more to life than just physical body pursuits, that there are higher goals, that man left alone can sink into the grossest acts of deeds, and we have seen mankind do it. Our animalistic appetite and the pleasures of the physical can drive us further and further away from our human godly pursuits and goals. So we need that constant reminder who we are, what we're capable of, that we have within us both the physical and the spiritual, that there's this constant tug of war between the two. And the tefillin gives some help to the side of the spiritual to remind the physical of who we are. This allows the Exodus to take place every single day, because the Exodus is not a one-time deal. That's why we think about the Exodus every day. You see, our battle is not only against this external Pharaoh. Pharaoh is that enemy of the story of the Exodus, but Pharaoh is something within us ourselves. We have within us an internal Pharaoh, our own Pharaoh within us. And Judaism teaches us that our most difficult battle in life is the battle with self. It's the self struggles that we have. And this battleground finds itself in thought. We battle thoughts, feelings, and action. The tefillin is about the combining of thought, of feeling, and action to the service of God. It's our daily exodus from the profane to the spiritual. So if we take time each day and we make a statement of dedication, a statement of commitment to God, we gather strength in our daily battle with our own pharaohs. And we experience our own daily exodus, our own journey to Sinai. Now it's interesting that if you paid attention, if you've ever looked at a pair of tefillin, you have a hand pair that goes on the hand, you have a head pair, and there's 4 chapters of the Bible that are inscribed on parchment, same parchment like a Torah scroll. So you're carrying within you a mini Torah scroll made up of 4 chapters of the Torah, and it's placed in these mini arcs. And we bind it upon our hand, and we bind it upon our head. It's the action with the hand. It's the feeling of the heart as the tefillin faces the heart. It's the thought of the head. And you're putting on these divine energy boxes. You're literally binding a Torah scroll to your hand, facing your heart and on your mind. And you were thinking about God during those moments. It's this divine energy that rushes through your body and soul and creates this personal exodus from your own Egypt. Now, there are 3,188 letters in a single pair of tefillin. And the scribe to write it must know the laws of every single one of those letters. The box is made up of one piece of leather. The leather is hardened. The boxes are all black. In the hand tefillin, all 4 chapters are in one scroll. In the head, all 4 scrolls are separate. That's why you have 4 different compartments. The straps are made of leather. All of this is learned from this one verse of the Shema, that you shall bind it on your hand and on your head. How do we know all of these detailed laws, these hundreds and hundreds of laws? The answer is you wouldn't know it from this one verse in the written Torah. It has to come along with an oral transmission as well. And Moses, when he taught us this particular mitzvah of tefillin, taught us all the details as well. It's interesting that of the thousands and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of pairs of tefillin throughout the world today, and found by archaeologists of the past years of history, they are all exactly the same. Why? Because there was one Torah given with one oral transmission to the entire world. I'll conclude this discussion of tefillin and we'll move on to Mezuzah with one cute story that I heard years ago. There was this fellow that started studying about tefillin, and he started putting it on. He bought himself a pair and he started putting it on every day. His wife was not so inclined to start bringing religion and ritual into their lives. And she started complaining. What do you think, you're becoming religious on me? Well, you didn't get married when we were religious. You're not going to start now. And she started complaining. He couldn't handle the complaints every single day hearing from his wife. In his house, there was a basement. So he decided, you know what, I'm not going to put it on openly in front of her. It just antagonizes her. It creates arguments. I want to keep peace in the home. Shalom bayis is important to me. Harmony in the marriage is important to me. I'm going to get up early every morning. I'm going to go down to my basement. I'll put the tefillin on for a minute. I'll say the Shema, put them away, and Shalom al Yisrael, will be peace in this home. And he begins to do that. But his wife finds out that he's doing that too. And she doesn't appreciate it. And he doesn't like having to hide. Well, I got to hide my identity in my own home. This is ridiculous. You know what? I tried. It's not working out. I'm not putting it on anymore. I'm done. Sorry, God. I tried, but I'm not looking for this argument every morning. I can't do it. I have to hide in my own home. And so he goes to work one morning. He's not putting on his film that day. He's in bumper-to-bumper traffic. He's in Chicago. He's on a highway. And there's bumper-to-bumper traffic. And he looks out his window to the car right in front of him, and there's a bumper sticker. And the bumper sticker says, "Did you put on your tefillin today?" That's all he needed. He realized God was sending him a message. Find a way to put it on. It's 1 minute a day. And the next morning, he went right back to his basement putting on his tefillin. It takes a minute to connect, to put in that, you take your cell phones at night, and what do? You charge it up. Tefillin is that charger. We put that in, and we get charged up for another day. Best to put it on in the morning, because then it changes the outlook of the entire day. If one doesn't get a chance to put it on in the morning, you have an entire day until nightfall to put on the tefillin. Once it gets dark, we don't put it on anymore. It's a mitzvah that's been given for the daytime, and we try to put it on during the day. As I mentioned last week, I do have a sponsor out there that's interested in sponsoring tefillin for all those that would like to start putting them on every day but can't afford the pair of tefillin. Just drop me an email. I'll have a sponsor purchase the tefillin for you, send it over to you. If you need help learning how to put it on, we'll be there for you and help you through the process. Let's get to the last line of the Shema, and that's about the Mezuzah. The Torah tells us you shall put mezuzahs beisecha v'sharecha on the doors and gateways of your home. You see, Judaism is not confined to the synagogue. Don't make that mistake. It's not a religion about a synagogue. It's a religion about the home. Yes, we come together in the Beit HaKnesset. We come together in our temples and our synagogues to celebrate our Judaism. But the bulk of Judaism is about the home. We strive for spirituality within the comfort and the familiarity of our own home. The mezuzah on the doorpost reminds those who walk through our doors that godly life accompanies us wherever we go. Our sages teach us that a mezuzah has this unique property, this unique energy of protecting the inhabitants of the home where it is hung. It's kind of like this protection service. People put those signs in front of their homes about what protective services there are that roam the neighborhood and look after the home, or there's surveillance cameras looking at this home, right? The mezuzah is that as well in the spiritual sense. It's the protection of God over this home. The mezuzah can be compared to a helmet, to this veneer that protects us against the dangers that surround us in our lives. The Talmud teaches that while most kings sit inside the home and their guards stand outside the palace protecting the king, God does it differently. God stations his protection outside the home and protecting his people, his subjects, who are inside the home. Now, when you pass through a doorway where there's a mezuzah, many have the tradition of putting their hand and touching the mezuzah. Some then kiss their hand as a sign of love for God and embracing of the rituals. Where does that word mezuzah come from? Anyone remember the very first time the Bible uses that word mezuzah? It's interesting. It comes from the chapter that introduces us to the Exodus. It's before the last plague. It's between plague number 9 and plague number 10 that brings about the Exodus. And God is going to bring a 10th and final plague upon the Egyptians, and it's going to be the death of the firstborn. And before that last plague, before the smiting of the Egyptian firstborn, the Almighty forewarns the Jewish people. And he says, there's going to be this last plague. And this is what you need to do to protect yourself from that last plague. And he tells them to bring the Paschal lamb and to take of the blood of the lamb. And what should you do with it? You shall put it al mezuzah, on the doorposts of your home. So the homes they were living in Egypt, they should smear some of the blood of the Paschal lamb on the doorposts of those homes, and the forces of destruction would then pass over those homes. And that's where we get the name Passover. For the destruction forces that are bringing this 10th and final plague will pass over the homes that had the Paschal lamb. And that's where we get the name Passover from. And the commentaries state there that these verses are the source of the concept of the mezuzah as well. And we see this direct relationship between the mitzvah of mezuzah and divine protection. A mezuzah affixed to the doorpost of the home connects us to Sinai and still has that power to protect us from harm and bring blessings to the lives of those living within these homes. There's a story that's told in the Talmud about someone named Onkelos. Onkelos is one of the most famous of all converts to the Jewish people. He was an actual nephew of the Roman emperor. And as a nephew of the Roman emperor, he was exposed to all the people that lived in the kingdom. He was fascinated by the Jewish people, fascinated by a people that had different rituals, different commandments, different way of life, fascinated by their morals and ethics, fascinated by their ability to stand up against powerful forces, including his own uncle, and keep their own ways. And so he began on his own to study about the Jewish people and about Judaism. And he began studying the Torah. And at some point he makes the decision that he's going to convert to Judaism. And he runs away from his uncle's palace, and he runs away from that lifestyle, and he converts to Judaism. And he, by the way, becomes one of the greatest minds of the Jewish people. So much so that he wrote a commentary on the 5 books of Moses. It's called the translation of Onkelos, and his translation is found in just about every printed Bible today. That's the respect that the Jewish people have given to this individual, to this convert, who wrote this commentary, that we publish his commentary in just about every printed version. It's not in the scroll, but in the printed versions, right on the side of the text of the Bible, is Onkelos' translation. So much so that we have the tradition, and we still practice it today, that on every single Friday, we review the entire portion, and we review Onkelos' translation as well of the portion. So the Talmud tells us a story. The emperor, his uncle, whose name was Titus, was outraged by his nephew's conversion to Judaism. And he sent some of his top advisors to go to Onkelos and to persuade him to return to his people. Stop this nonsense. Stop your fascination with Judaism. Stop this conversion. You're part of the emperor. You don't convert to another religion. Bring him back. Convince him. And so they go and they begin a conversation with Onkelos. We're sent here by your uncle Titus, the emperor of Rome, to talk to you about it. We're great philosophers ourselves. Let's talk. Let's have a debate. Let's have a conversation. And Onkelos engages in conversation. He is so persuasive that he convinces all of them not to go back and to convert to Judaism as well and to study under him. And they do so. And so now Titus is furious, not just at his nephew, but now his advisors as well. And so he sends delegation after delegation with the same result. Finally, he sends a legion of soldiers. And he tells them, you are not to engage in any conversation with my nephew. You are to simply find him, put chains on him, and bring him here. No discussions, no debates, no messages. Find him, chain him, drag him, bring him back to the capital. And these legionnaires go with the instructions that they were given. They find Onkelos, and they let it be known they will not engage in conversation with him. They chain his arms, they chain his legs, and they begin schlepping him out of his house. As he's about to leave, he simply tells them, not going to have any conversations, but please, as we pass the doorway of the home, let me place my hand on the mezuzah. That's all I ask. They look at each other. There's no harm in that. We're not engaging in any discussion. So as Onkelos passes through the door, he places his hand on the mezuzah and he kisses his hand. One of the legionnaires says, what was that all about? What was that all about? I'll tell you. Your king, my uncle, has you guys standing outside the palace as his guards, and he's inside being protected by you. My emperor, my king, stands outside my home and protects me. The mezuzah is that message of God that he's watching over me. That began the engaging of conversations with the legionnaires, who, as you can predict, stop, and they continue this discussion with Onkelos, and they never bring him back. All from that placing his hand on the mezuzah. The mezuzah is this sign of eternal love between Israel and their Creator. And it brings these blessings to one's home, blessings that stay with us, not just inside the home, but wherever it is that we go. In ancient times, it was the Jewish custom, and it's brought down in the Mishnah, and the Talmud, and in the Medrash, people would carry a mezuzah with them as well, not just put it up on their door, but they would actually carry it with them. It was customary amongst Sephardic Jews that they would take a mezuzah, and if they would have a trial in the courtroom, they would have a mezuzah on the desk there, on the table there in the courtroom. It's a practice today amongst many Jews that when a woman goes into labor and goes to the hospital, that she takes a mezuzah with her as well. These are all just traditions, not written in the Torah. The Torah tells you about a mezuzah on the doorpost. But people felt so connected to this holiness of the mezuzah that they would take it with them. Nowadays, the customs is still alive amongst the Sephardic community, in the Hasidic community as well, to have a mezuzah on one's desk. It was told that many people would take a mezuzah now that we have automobiles and cars can be dangerous vehicles as well, and they would keep a mezuzah in what we used to call the glove compartment of a car. I don't know if it's still called the glove compartment. It was probably named on the East Coast, where you would actually have to keep gloves in case it began to snow. But that compartment in the front, you have your insurance, your registration. People keep a mezuzah in there as well. If you have something of Jewish ritual that's about protection, think about the places that you would want to put a mezuzah. But what's most important is that you have it on the door of your home. If you already have one on the front door of your home and you still don't have them on the other doors of your home, consider inviting a Chabad rabbi over to your home to see how many mezuzahs you would need and to order those mezuzahs. They can be costly as well, so perhaps start with a few each time and add to it. But ultimately, you want to try to have a mezuzah on every door of every bedroom in your home. You don't put it up on the restrooms. You don't need it on the closets. But the other doors of your home, the more mezuzahs you have, the more the powerful the energy that comes forth. When we talk about a mezuzah, we're talking about the parchment. I know we all look for the beautiful cases, but it's not the case that's the mezuzah. It's the parchment inside the case. And you want to make sure that those are made by a scribe that knows how to write a mezuzah, that it's not paper from a copy machine, but they're actually made in a kosher way by a scribe that knows exactly how to write it. I want to go back to the very word of this entire discussion, and that word is Shema. You're all familiar with the word Shema. Shema Yisrael. And that's what we've been studying now for quite some time. I'm reminded of a sermon that my father of blessed memory once gave in our synagogue. He was here visiting, and I never forgot these words he said. He said that in Yiddish, my father spoke Yiddish primarily. He understood English, but when he spoke to us, to his family, he would speak in his native tongue in Yiddish. And he would say that in Yiddish, there's two words that describe listening. You say in Yiddish, zu hören. Zu hören means to listen. And then he said you also say zu der hören. What's the difference? Hören or der hören? In Hebrew, he said you find also a similarity of two words, lahazin and lishmoa. Now what's the difference? Zu hören, the simple Yiddish words, means to listen, which is the mechanism of sound waves reaching the eardrums. You hear the noises, you hear the sounds. Zu der hören, on the other hand, means that you're not only hearing the sound, but the sound triggers the mind, and now the mind is focused. We can say it in English, to absorb. There's one thing about listening, but are you absorbing? Are you internalizing? Is the message reaching you, or you're just hearing words? Let's be honest. We all went to school, elementary school, high school. Some of you went to college. We take classes. We listen to lectures. There are those times that you listened. You listened. You went to school, the teacher spoke, you listened. You may have even absorbed a little bit because you were driven by your grades. Some of you liked it very much when you came home and you told your parents you got a 95, you got a 98, you got 100 on your exam, you got an A+, right? And the desire to see the smile on your parents' face made you drive yourself to get that grade. There's nothing wrong with that. I would say that a good part of my school life was doing that. I loved coming home with good grades, not because I was getting wise from it. I just loved telling my parents that I got a high mark. That's the honest truth. I was driven very, very much by tests, grades. I needed to score the highest. I was just driven by it. That's hidden. I hear it. I hear it. I study it. I do it. But that's not the higher form. That's not Shema. Absorbing it means it's not about the grade. It's about internalizing the message. What's the teacher really trying to say? What's the message here? Is it shaping your life? Is it having an effect on your life? Let's put it this way. Are you going to be different today than you were yesterday because of what you just heard? That, my father said, that's what Shema means. If it's just listening and it's just getting the grade, it's a subject. Did it touch your soul? Is it having the impact? Is it now part of your essence? Is it part of your identity? Is it part of who you are? That's what that word zu der Herren means. It takes you over. It's not just a mechanism of hearing something with your ears. It's you now. There was a mom that was once sitting on the couch in the living room. She's reading her newspaper, and a little daughter comes up to her and starts talking to her, and she's trying to tell her something. And she's listening and reading, and every once in a while, yeah, sure. We do that all the time, right? And finally, this little sweet child says, "Mommy, you're not listening." And mom says back what we always said as parents, "What are you talking about? I listened to every word you said," right? And the little child said it best. And she said, "But Mommy, you're not listening with your eyes. You may be listening to the words, but I know when you're listening, when you have that eye contact with me. I know what that feels like, and I'm not feeling it right now. Your eyes are on the newspaper. Your eyes are on the TV set. Your eyes are on your cell phone. You're listening to me, but you're not listening to me." That's the point of Shema, that we're getting the message. That's the art of listening. There are many times in each of our lives' experiences that we deal with people that have problems, have issues, have tsaros, have pain. And very often, we're not able to help. We want to help, we care, but we don't have what it takes to solve their issues or resolve their crisis for them. It's out of our domain. But you know what we could do? We can always listen. That every one of us can do. I'm not just talking about listen, I'm talking Shema, listen. I'm talking listening with the eyes, listening with the embrace, listening with the heart, listening with empathy. They know, your friend in crisis knows when you're listening or when you're listening. And they know the difference. It's listening, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Oh, may God help that tomorrow will be better." You have those conversations, and you hang up, and you go on with your life. But then there's listening with the heart. That listening is very different. You don't throw it on God. You don't say, "God will help." It's after you hang up, you think about it. What can you possibly do? Who can you possibly call? Maybe you can't help, but maybe someone can. Maybe there's someone that knows someone that knows someone. It's affected you. It's changed you. That's listening with your heart. We've all experienced, and we all know this, that we can alleviate the distress of others by empathy. That just giving someone the love, the outlet, that there's someone else that cares, helps. In a spiritual way, it actually brings blessings. In a spiritual way, really caring for someone has such a powerful effect that it can bring about physical change. Don't underestimate your power, your angelic power that you have to bring about change for someone else. The Torah tells us quite often that praying for someone else is such a powerful form of communication with God, because when God sees that you really care, that it's affecting you, how someone else is living and what they're dealing with, there's Yeshua, there is help, there's salvation that comes. I'll tell you this story, and we'll conclude with this. In the mid-1980s, there was a woman who lived in the city of Tzfat, Israel, Safed. She was married for 8 years. She had one child, and she desperately wanted another child. But she wasn't blessed with the second child. She and her husband, this was on their mind all the time. They wanted a second child. They had their first child in their first year of marriage, and then the next 7 years, no children. One day she attends a lecture in Jerusalem. It was given by an American-born rabbi. And she was very moved by this rabbi's talk, very taken by it, inspired by it. So after the lecture, people are lining up to see the speaker. She waits online and she asks, "Can I talk to you in private?" He says, "Of course." And she begins to cry. She cries her heart out and she says, I just feel a connection to you. I think there's something special about you. So I want you to give me a blessing that my husband and I should merit to bring another child into this world. I want your blessing. So the rabbi says, there are rabbis and there are rebbes. You know, the rebbes guys, those are the leaders of dynasties. They're holy people. They give out such blessings. I'm just a title rabbi. I'm not the holy guy. I don't give out blessings. It's not my, I don't got tuned into the heavenly worlds that I can give you a blessing that it would mean something. There are, rebbes. These guys, they have the skill. They're connected. I'm not anything special. I give a lecture. I teach. I'm a teacher. That's all. The woman wouldn't accept his explanation. And she said, look, I sat through your talk, and I'm telling you, you touched my soul. And if someone could touch my soul, then there's something there. And I want a blessing from you. You don't think you have power. I don't care what you think about yourself. I'm asking you for a favor. Give me a blessing that my husband and I should merit to have another child. The man, again, is uncomfortable, but now he really can't turn her down. She's phrasing it of, I don't care if you think you're holy or not. I'm asking you for a favor. How can he say no? But at the same time, he doesn't feel adequate. So he says this. He says, listen here. I want you to know something. The pain that you're expressing to me today strikes a very sensitive chord within me. Why? Because I have a similar source of pain in my own life. I have a daughter. She lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She's been married for 10 years, and she hasn't had any children. So I'm not a Rebbe. I'm not a Hasidic master that can give blessings. But I do know this. The Talmud teaches us that if one has a problem and prays for a friend that has the same issue, his own prayers will be answered as well. So I want to make a deal with you. Here's the deal. You, whoever you are, I don't even know your name, you'll pray for my daughter that she has a child in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'll pray for you. Let's exchange contact information. Let's stay in touch. That's the deal I want to make. You're saying that you want my blessings. I want yours. Because you touched me deeply with your pain. That's the offer I want to make to you. At that point, this woman's heart broke into a million pieces because not only does she have her own plight of longing for a child, she now is feeling the pain for someone she never met in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who's never had any children. And she makes the deal and she promises the rabbi that she will pray every single day for your daughter. And the rabbi promised, I will pray every single day for you. And let's stay in touch. They went their separate ways. Time passed. Eventually, the rabbi's daughter in Milwaukee adopted a child. Yet even as years passed, the rabbi never forgot about the anguish of the woman he met that night in Jerusalem. Every single day for years, he prayed for her. He had literally stopped contact with her because years had gone by, but he wouldn't stop praying. One day, 5 years after that lecture, he receives this amazing piece of news. Miracle of miracles. His daughter in Milwaukee was expecting their first biological child after 15 years of marriage. Miracle. The entire family is ecstatic. But you know what he's thinking? He's thinking about the woman he met at the lecture in Jerusalem. He has to get in touch with her. How's she doing? A few days later, he gets a letter in the mail, and he sees the return postages from Tzfat, Israel. He opens it up. This is what it says. Rabbi, I would like you to know that I was informed just yesterday that I am pregnant with a child, and I wanted you to be the first to know. All he can do is smile and cry. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But the story doesn't end there. The doctors gave the rabbi's daughter in Milwaukee a due date of the first day of the Hebrew month of Shvat for the arrival of her child. As it turns out, the baby, a beautiful little girl, arrived 2 weeks later than expected, born on Tu B'Shvat, on the 15th day of the month of Shvat. A few days later, he gets a call from an excited woman in Sfas. Her doctors gave her a due date, but her baby was born earlier than expected. And just a few days ago, my husband and I welcomed our new son to this world. What day was your son born? The 15th of Shvat. An infant girl in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a newborn boy in Sfat, Israel. One seemingly came late, the other came early, but they didn't come late or early at all because their arrivals were synchronized by something higher than physical due dates. Why? Because one Jew listened and internalized. It wasn't just he heard, Shema. He made her pain his pain. She made his pain her pain. They felt it in the deepest and the realest of ways, that every day for 5 years across continents they thought of each other. She thinking about a couple in Milwaukee, he thinking about a couple in Sfat. And these two precious children come into this world united by this special bond of empathy, of people caring for one another. Shema. Let's try practicing it. When we hear something, what are we doing with those sound waves? Let's make it part and parcel of our lives. I'd like to invite you to join me tonight for the story of Joseph. Tonight we have the revelation of Joseph, when Joseph reveals himself to his brothers with the line, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" 7:30 tonight on Zoom. I look forward to having you. Take care, everyone. Have a great week.